Now, today, we are gonna see, what if Edward found Harry Potter at Hogwarts? Join Patreon for early ACESS and exclusive content of Super Op stories, also adult and steamy Harry Potter stories too. Please subscribe this channel, because definitely I will try my best to provide a valuable content for you all. Also check the description to support the original author for this beautiful creation. Harry James Potter looked out across the battlefield, surveying everyone and thing. Harry had just defeated the Dark Lord Voldemort, he had fulfilled the prophecy. But now what? He looked around. He saw friends helping lovers. Fred and George Weasley were helping Draco Malfoy stand up, a nasty wound on his right knee. He saw ex-friends and ex-lovers, Ron Weasley, EY and Hermione Granger were moving rubble of Ginny Weasley. He saw family. Remus Lupin, Sirius Black and Lucius Malfoy were congratulating each other. He saw ex-family, Molly and Arthur Weasley Gath. Read all their children, not including the twins, but including Hermione, together, and checked over each and every one of them. The war had taken a lot out of everyone. Every single participant lost someone they cared about. Whether it was from the war or the person's prejudice, the still lost friends, lovers and family members, though no one lost as much as Harry Potter did. At age 1 Harry lost his parents. They were murdered by Voldemort. At 15 he lost his godfather, Sirius Black. At 16, his mentor Albus Dumbledore was killed. At 17, his only family, the Dursleys, were killed as Harry was leaving. At 17 he lost a whole family. At the beginning of the year Harry discovered his preference. He was gay. When he told his 3 best friends, Ron, Ginny and Hermione, they told him it was unnatural. And they couldn't hang out with a fag. They then ousted him to every wizarding paper in the world. Harry Potter lost the only family he had ever truly had, the Weasleys. And Fred and George lost the family they always had. The family blamed Harry for the twins' fagness, and told him that he was no longer welcomed in their house. Though Harry lost many loved ones, he gained many more. Halfway through their 7th year at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, Harry Potter and Draco Malfoy, 2 of the biggest rivals the school had ever seen, came out together. By May, they were in love. By November, they were married, and Harry had gained a new family. Lucius and Narcissa Malfoy looked at Harry like a son. On Harry's 18th birthday, he found Awa. Why to bring his godfather back from beyond the veil. Harry was happy at this point. He had a new family, one that didn't judge him on little things, one that loved him for him and not because they're dough. GHTER wanted to marry the famous Harry Potter. But now looking around he should have known that wouldn't last. Severus Snape, the man the Harry thought of as an uncle, was dead. Draco, the love of Harry's life, was slowly dying. Lucius had lost his left arm, from the elbow down, as a way to rid himself of the dark mark. Remus, Harry's other pseudo-uncle, had heart troubles now, after having liquid silver injected into his bloodstream. Harry's family were sitting in the hospital wing, awaiting any news on Draco, when Poppy Pomfrey entered the ward. She shook her head, before walking to her office. Everyone was frozen. Tears were starting to form in their eyes, and almost as one, everyone started to cry. The funeral service was a week later. Draco was buried in the graveyard at Hogwarts with the rest of the heroes of the war. His gravestone said, "A hero is no braver than an ordinary man, but he is braver 5 minutes longer. Friend, lover, son, rival, enemy, hero. Here lies a hero of the war, Draco Malfoy Potter. May he rest in peace." Over the next months, Harry locked himself away in the house that he and Draco bought, ready to live their new lives in. People came to visit, with hopes to coax him into coming outside. All let down when they were politely hinted towards leaving, until no one came to visit anymore. On August 14th Harry received his first owl in months. Lord H. J. Potter Malfoy, we here at Gringotts formally request a meeting to discuss your various inheritances and your financial situation. If you agree to this meeting, please place a drop of your blood on the piece of parchment before signing your name. We offer our condolences for your losses in the war. Yours sincerely, Ragnarok Head Goblin, Gringotts Bank, Diagon Alley Branch. What was Harry to do? He knew that this was important. So he brought out a quill and a small pocket knife, and placed a drop of blood on the parchment and signed his name. Thank you for agreeing, Lord Potter Malfoy. Please arrive at 11:30 tomorrow morning. Ragnarok appeared on the parchment below the original message. Harry went to bed that night, eager for the meeting that would take place tomorrow. On the morning of the 15th of August, a young man walked up the stairs of the Diagon Alley branch of Gringotts Bank. He had an air of authority around him, and people automatically moved out of his way. He approached an empty teller, and asked for Ragnarok, saying that he was Harry Potter and he had a meeting with the head goblin. He was led away from the entrance hall and into a small room where he saw Sirius Black, Lucius Malfoy and a goblin sitting. The goblin was the first to notice him enter, Lord Potter Malfoy. "What an honor it is to meet you, sir. Please sit down," he said, gesturing to the grand chair in front of his desk. Harry obliged, taking the seat before smiling at his father-in-law and godfather. "Now Lord Potter Malfoy, just Harry is fine." Harry smiled. "Harry, of course. Now Harry, we have come here to discuss various inheritances. The first is the Malfoy estate. As you married the heir, and only child of the Malfoy line, you are set to inherit the whole estate, minus several fees that go towards the Lady Malfoy and her family. The Lord Malfoy is present here to sign off on you as his heir, if that is all right with you, Harry." The goblin asked, showing several papers with Lucius' signature on them already. Nodding, Harry took a quill and signed his name, accepting the heirship to the Malfoy name. "Good, onto the Black line. It is the same process, except as you are being named heir through your godfather. You are to be adopted into the Black family, you will pretty much be Lord Black's son. Again, if that is all right, sign on the line." Harry signed away, glad that he was finally becoming something akin to Sirius, son. "Thank you, Harry. You have just merged the four noble and most ancient wizarding families that are still around today. The Blacks, Evans, Malfoys and Potters are the richest families in the world." Harry was shocked. He was always told that his mum was Muggle-born. He stated this: "Lily Evans came from a long line of squibs. If that is all in order, I have a letter that I was told to give you. Your mother's lineage should be in there, along with many other secrets that have been lost. We at Gringotts hope that you find what you are looking for." Ragnarok finished with a toothy smile. Before standing, bowing and walking out of the room, Sirius and Lucius both turned to Harry, who quickly stood and left the room, returning home to read the letter in private. When he arrived home, he hung his cloak on the rack, asked Dobby to prepare a meal for him, before retiring to the living room to read the letter, only stopping to eat. "My dearest son, Hadrian. If you are reading this, then both I and James have passed away, and you have turned 18 years of age. We both pray that you had a good life, and that we died trying to protect our baby son. I have instructed Ragnarok to give you this letter when he tells you of your inheritances and financial status among the wizarding world. If he did not, Hadrian, you are now the richest wizard alive. Only your uncle Lucius has managed to raise his fortune by 40 billion galleons in the past years, which I don't believe even he could achieve. Anyway, the point of this letter is to tell you two secrets that very few people know. The first, you are pure blood. I come from a very long line of squibs. Our family's magic died out centuries ago, until I was born. The Evans family was the richest family at the time our magic died out. And so it sat there gathering interest in Gringotts until I turned 11. The second thing is something only 3 people in this world know, only one if you were reading this letter. James Adrian Potter is not your biological father. Due to a hex gone wrong during the war, James was unable to have children. So we decided to find someone that would help us. We wanted them to be magical, but not part of the wizarding world. I remembered that I had a friend in the States, Charlie Swan, who didn't know he was a squib. He is your true father. He lives in a town in Washington state called Forks. He is the only man alive who knows of this fact, so you will be safe there. He would be happy to let you live with him, so ask him. I have rambled on enough now, my son. Always know that I love you. Hadrian James Charles Potter Swan. Your mother, Lillian Andrea Evans Potter, lady of the noble and most ancient house of Potter. Harry was crying as he finished the letter. He thought about what his mum had said. Should he go meet his father? It would mean he could leave England, leave behind all the memories, but it would mean leaving behind his family. He decided quickly, Dobby, can you please bring me some paper and a pen, and then go and pack my bags? I plan on leaving England for a while. Dobby brought the items asked for, and Harry started to write his letter. Dear Mr. C. Swan, my name is Hadrian Potter, Lillian Evans Potter's son, your son. I have just received a letter from my late mother, telling me about you, and the relationship we share. She also said that you might not mind my coming to live with you. I was wondering, would you mind? I would really like to get to know the man who was technically my father. Please respond to the address on the back of the envelope. Yours truly, Hadrian James Charles Potter Malfoy Black Swan. He walked down to the Muggle post office, and after finding Charlie's address in a guide, he mailed his letter off, and returned home to pack and wait. Harry did not have to wait long. The return letter arrived 3 days later, express mail. Hadrian, I would like nothing more than to get to know you. You will always be welcomed here in Forks. Please tell me if you would like for me to arrange your transport here. From Charlie. As soon as Harry received his letter, he asked Lucius and Narcissa, and Sirius and Remus to come around. He told them of everything he learned, and what his plans were. The group were glad that he had someone, but were sad to see him leave. Narcissa wrapped him in a hug and told him that if he ever wanted to come back, he could. He then turned to Lucius and asked him to prepare a portkey to just outside of Forks for 2 days' time. Lucius obliged, and handed the piece of rope to him. After saying his goodbyes and promising to write, Harry left for home. Packing the last of his belongings, he went to sleep, anxious about what would happen over the next few months. Chapter 4. Had Ryan arrived just outside of Charlie his father's house in Forks. This was it, his chance at a new life. All he had to do was ring that doorbell. Stepping up, he reached forward with his arm, before pulling back. Should he? Yes, he deserved a new life. After everything he had done to save the world, he deserved a chance to have a good life, and to live it how and under whatever circumstances he wanted. He reached forward once again, this time going all the way, and pressed the doorbell. Charlie Swan heard the doorbell go off. Hadrian is here. He looked around his living room, checking to make sure everything was in its correct place, before going to answer the door. He opened the front door to see a young man, Hadrian. Hadrian had waist-long midnight black hair, and his mother's bright green emerald eyes. He had a small lightning bolt scar across his forehead on the right side, and another smallish lightning bolt running parallel to the first across his left eye. The clothes he wore appeared to be tailored especially for him, and looked to have cost a pretty penny. Come in, Hadrian, come in, Charlie said, letting his son into the small house. Is there anything I can get for you? No, sir. Can we talk? There is something I need to talk to you about, Hadrian asked. Charlie nodded, ushering the boy into the living room and onto a couch. Now what do you know? Do you have any questions? He asked. I know quite a bit, sir, and what teenage boy doesn't have questions? Charlie nodded, telling Hadrian to ask them. What does OK actually stand for? Does it really count in C? Or when an atheist is sworn under oath using a Bible? How can there be self-help groups? Why does mineral water, which has trickled through mountains for centuries, go out of date next year? Do vampires get AIDS? But I'll assume you don't mean those sorts of questions, sir. Charlie shook his head. Of course the boy would take after Lily. She had the smartest mouth any girl ever did have. No. I didn't mean those sorts of questions, but if I see a vampire, I will ask him. And please, stop it with the sir. It is Dad, or some other variation, or Charlie, please. Now, what did you wish to talk about, son? This is going to take a while, so please, no interruptions. July the 31st, 1980, in a little town called Godric's Hollow, Hadrian James Charles Potter Swan was born. His two parents, Lord James and Lady Lillian Potter of the most noble and most ancient House Potter, were two of the strongest and most magically gifted wizards and witches at that time. Hadrian was born in the middle of the First Magical War, and both his parents were wanted dead by Lord Voldemort, the Dark Lord of the time. Shortly after Hadrian's birth, a prophecy was made. The one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord approaches, born to the lily and the stag as the 7th month dies, and the Dark Lord will mark him as his equal, but he will have power the Dark Lord knows not, and either Us die at the hand of the other, for neither can live while the other survives. This prophecy controlled Hadrian's life from then on. On Halloween 1981, Lord Voldemort visited that Potter's house in Godric's Hollow and murdered James and Lillian. Albus Dumbledore, headmaster of the famous school, Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, took young Hadrian and placed him with his Aunt Petunia, Uncle Vernon and cousin Dudley Dursley. Here he was raised, unaware of his fame, and of the wizarding world, until his 11th birthday, until Dumbledore sent someone to guide him into the magical world. At age 11, Hadrian started at Hogwarts, and made two of the best friends he could have possibly made, Ron Weasley and Hermione Granger. He also learnt of his fame, and of his parents' untimely demise, but he was not told of the prophecy that controlled his life. The next year, Hadrian was 12, and about to start on his second year at Hogwarts, when a house elf got him into trouble with the Ministry of Magic. By performing magic in front of adults, Hadrian was blamed. At the end of his second year, Hadrian went up against the memory of Lord Voldemort at age 16. He defeated the Dark Lord, and saved Ron's younger sister, Ginevra. Ginny would forever now have a crush on Hadrian. During Hadrian's third year, Sirius Black escaped from the wizarding prison Azkaban. Hadrian was practically locked up during the school terms in hopes to save him from the mass murderer and his parents' betrayer. During this time he had private tutoring from his defense against the dark arts professor, Remus J. Lupin. At the end of the year, Hadrian met Sirius Black and discovered his innocence. Sirius did not in fact betray Hadrian's parents to Voldemort, rather Peter Pettigrew, believed dead, did. And he lived as a rat in the same dormitory as Hadrian. Peter was caught, but then escaped when Remus turned into a werewolf. At this point, Hadrian stopped talking to take a breath. He pulled out his wand and conjured a glass of water, taking a sip before continuing with his story. The next year was Hadrian's fourth year, and this year the magical world decided to hold the Tri-Wizard Tournament, and of course, Hadrian was chosen as the second, and pretty much, illegal, Hogwarts champion. He completed the first two tasks perfectly, and soon started practicing for the final task. On the night of the final task, Hadrian reached the center of the maze at the same time as his fellow and legal Hogwarts champion, Cedric Diggory. They were transported away to a graveyard in the little town Little Hangleton. Cedric was killed automatically. Peter Pettigrew used Hadrian's blood to resurrect his Lord Voldemort. Hadrian escaped and was transported back to Hogwarts, where he warned everyone of Voldemort's return. Over these 3 years, Hadrian was still uninformed of the prophecy that was about to become the biggest and most controlling factor of his life. Over Hadrian's 5th year at Hogwarts, newspapers wrote of his apparent descent into insanity. The minister did not believe Hadrian's tale of Voldemort being back. But after his final exams, when he received a vision of his godfather, Sirius Black, dying, Hadrian raced off to save him. Hadrian and friends of his raced off to the ministry, and went to the place Hadrian saw in his vision. It was empty. Voldemort's followers came and told Hadrian to take a prophecy down, and hand it to them. Hadrian took it down, but smashed it instead. A battle began, the Dark Lord's followers against Dumbledore's Order of the Phoenix. Everything went fine, until Sirius was pushed into the veil. He was now believed to be dead. The ministry now knew of Voldemort's return. Dumbledore told young Hadrian of the prophecy, explaining what it meant, and what it could mean for the future. Hadrian's 6th year was one of the hardest. At the end, Voldemort's Death Eaters stormed the castle, killing Hadrian's mentor, Professor Albus Brian Percival Wulfric Dumbledore. Dumbledore had told Hadrian of his new quest, destroy Voldemort's Horcruxes, or pieces of soul as they essentially were, before finally killing Voldemort and ending the war. Over the summer between Hadrian's 6th and 7th years, he learned an important fact about himself: he was gay. He was not sure of what to make of his discovery, and so decided to ask his best friend's opinions once school resumed again. As Hadrian was leaving his uncle and aunt's house for the last time, Death Eaters attacked, killing his only living, or so he believed, relatives. He didn't mourn them, for they had done nothing but abuse him his whole life. When he arrived back at school, he asked his friends what he should make of being gay. They rejected him upon hearing this, calling him a fag, and telling them to leave them alone. They then told the whole wizarding world about Hadrian's preference, and it made the front cover of many tabloids for weeks. Hadrian was alone, besides Ron's older brothers, who came out to their parents and were also rejected, when his longtime rival approached him. Draco Malfoy told Hadrian that he himself was gay, and that he shouldn't feel ashamed. They became fast friends. After a few days, they were even more. 6 months later, they were in love. The fact that they were in the middle of a war made them move to the next step faster. And so 9 months after the first started dating, they got married. For his whole 7th, and final, year at Hogwarts, Hadrian was on alert. He was ready to fight Voldemort at all times. He always carried his second wand around, as well as a sword strapped across his back, and a dagger down each of his steel-capped boots. The year passed quickly, but Voldemort didn't come out of hiding. Hadrian, Draco, Ron and Hermione all graduated, ready to take on the world outside of school. On Hadrian's 18th birthday, Hadrian discovered a spell that would allow him to bring back his much-loved godfather from beyond the veil. That very night, Sirius Black stepped through the grand doors at Hogwarts, for the first time as a free man, in 17 years. A week later, Voldemort decided he was ready, and he attacked Hogwarts. Hadrian destroyed the Dark Lord, just as the prophecy said he would, and the war ended. Both sides had many losses, including the Savior's husband, Draco Malfoy Potter. Hadrian hid himself away from the world, until he received a letter from his mother, informing him of his true parentage. He decided to meet his newfound father, and so traveled to a little town on the Olympic Peninsula in Washington state, called Forks. Hadrian finished, taking a deep breath, his eyes locked onto Charlie's, hoping that they would give him some indication of the man's thoughts. "My son, I'm sorry for everything that you have been through." Charlie rose from his seat, and pulled the young man before him into a hug. "Now, I have something for you." Pulling his son towards the front door, they walked outside. In the driveway on the side of the house stood a rusting reddish-colored truck, with big, rounded tenders and a bulbous cab. "What make is it?" Hadrian looked up at his father. He loved the look of the truck. It wasn't perfect, but it was just the type of car he would drive. "A Chevy, late 50s, early 60s model, I think." "What do you think?" Charlie looked down at his son, anxious of what he would think. Hadrian ran at his father, enveloping the taller man in a hug. "I love it, thank you, Dad," he yelled, before letting go and running over to his truck. "I'm going to go take it for a spin." He jumped into the cab, turned on the ignition, and drove off. Charlie retreated back inside the house, ready to think about the story that his son had told him. But first, he needed a beer. Chapter 5. As Hadrian drove off in his new, for him, truck, he questioned his previous actions. Hadrian had never had a true father. He had father figures in Remus, Sirius, Severus, and Lucius, but none of these men could he truly describe as a father. Sirius was the older brother, the man that he would go to for fun. Remus and Severus were the uncles that he went to for help academically and trusted to share the dreams he received from Lord Voldemort. Lucius Malfoy was the man he went to for advice, first for lists of spells he would need, eventually branching out into personal and all-around needed advice. But now he had a true father, Charlie. But that still doesn't explain his actions earlier in the house. He had readily started to call Charlie his father, for some reason that was unknown to him. It could be because he felt a connection to the man, but in truth, Hadrian had never had a father, but now he had a man who could be that long-wanted father. And Hadrian was going to make sure that he never lost him. Charlie Swan, chief of police for the Forks Police, sat on a couch in the middle of his living room. He had a bottle of VB beer in his right hand, and the television remote in his left. The TV was on, though Charlie wasn't watching it, and later could not recall what would have even been on. On the table sat an unopened 6-pack of pale ale, and an already finished bottle of VB. Charlie sat on the couch, unmoving for a while, thinking of the events that had taken place in this very house over the past 2 decades, give or take a few years. "Charlie, is that you?" came a voice over the phone. The lady on the other end sounded familiar, yet he couldn't place her. Charlie looked up at the clock that hung above his kitchen fridge freezer. He needed to meet Renee in 25 minutes, hopefully this call wouldn't be long. There would be hell to pay if he was late for this date, as he was for the last 5 or so. Yes, this is Charlie. May I ask who is calling? He asked, trying to keep the irritation out of his voice, not sure if he was succeeding or not. Charlie, it's Lillian Evans, do you remember me? Came ye across the line. And in that one sentence, everything clicked. Lily Evans. Charlie hadn't heard from Lily in a while. Lily, how could I forget you? What is it you are calling for? All feelings of irritation, and thoughts of dates, and being late, were momentarily forgotten as Charlie talked to his long-time, and greatly missed British friend. Charlie, my husband, James, and I, were wondering if you would mind us stopping by for a visit in the next couple of days. We had something we wanted to ask you. Would that be okay? You could hear the worried tone that Lily carried in her voice, and upon hearing that, there was no way Charlie could say no. Anything for you, Lily. But is it possible to continue this conversation some other time? I have a date that I need to get to. He asked, and upon hearing it was okay, and arranging a time and place to meet up, he hung the phone up before running outside. The call he had received from Lily was strange in the least bit. He had not heard from her in well over a year, and to be hearing from her out of the blur like that, had Charlie worried. The phone call was weird, yes, but the request which came from his friend and her husband was weirder still. You want me to what? Yelled a confused Charlie. Lily and James Potter had been sitting in his living room for all of 5 minutes when they had come out with their strange request. We want your help. James is unable to have children, and with the fighting that is going on in Britain, we wanted someone who wasn't British. Someone that our child can go to if all he fighting becomes too much and they are unsafe. Charlie looked at both of the people in front of him, staring into their eyes, almost as if he was trying to read their soul. They had explained this fighting that was going on, and could fully understand where they were coming from. Besides, it's not as if he would have to raise the child, only if something happened to its parents. Charlie quickly considered the pros and cons, discovering more pros than there were cons. He was close to making his mind up when James started talking. You would not be required to pay anything towards the child, my family is very well off. So if they were to live with you, you would have access to a certain amount of the money to cover the living expenses of the child. Charlie's con list grew one item shorter. Please consider this. And we will come back in a few days to hear your answer. If you did go through with it, we would be eternally grateful. Come on, Lils. Lily stood up, and after hugging Charlie, she turned and started walking to the door. Wait, I'll do it. Lily turned and ran back to the living room, openly crying as she hugged her friend before hugging her husband. Thank you, Charlie. Charlie had never considered the outcome of the decision over the years. Over the first few years he often wondered about his child. Was it a girl or a boy? What did they look like? Were they smart like their mother? But eventually these thoughts had been taken over by thoughts of his newly found little girl. Charlie, it's Renee here. Do you remember me? We dated roughly 2 years ago. Well, Charlie, I have some news. You're a father. You have a daughter, Isabella Marie Swan. I'm sorry for not telling you this earlier, but I can't look after her anymore. I'm sorry. Renee Dwyer, her husband Phil, and her 2-year-old daughter, stood out the front of Charlie's house in Forks. Silence hung in the air rather awkwardly as no one spoke. Phil looked down at his watch, and noticing the time told his wife they had to leave. Charlie, I'm sorry that I never told you about Bella, but I never knew what to say. We never would have worked out, and I didn't even know if you wanted a daughter. I really am sorry, but now, I can't look after her. Phil's job requires raveling, and Bella can't handle the amount that is required, and I'm not ready to be a mum, I never was. So please take her, give her the life I never could. Charlie and Bella Swan stood on their front porch as they watched Phil and Renee Dwyer, the only parents Bella had known, drive away in the rain. Charlie had never truly forgiven Renee for just dropping Bella on him, but he was glad that she did. He loved his daughter, his whole town did, the natives that lived on the reservation at La Push loved little Bella Swan. Everyone was heartbroken when at age 10, Bella went missing in the woods, later found dead by a small creek, mauled by some animal. Charlie, I'm sorry. Bella was found this morning. 2C. Ampers found her by the creek that runs through the woods. It appears as if she was attacked by a wolf, or bear or something. I'm sorry, Chief. Charlie didn't leave the house for 3 months after he received the news of his little angel. He missed her so much. She would have been the same age as Hadrian, give or take a few months. Looking back at his actions that afternoon, he wondered why he had been like that. He had never met this boy, but, after hearing his story, could not help but feel something for him. He wasn't sure what it was he was feeling, pity. No, these were feelings he hadn't felt since Bella. That was it. Hadrian already felt like his son. He always knew he existed, but had never really thought about him. But now that he had met him, he couldn't help but already consider him his family. He couldn't help but love him. When Bella had died, he thought he would never get to see his child graduate, find a first partner, get their first job. He never thought he would see his child get married, never see them raise a family of their own, never get to see his grandchildren. But now that Hadrian had come, he could. God, or whoever was up there, had given him another chance. Hadrian drove around the small town, hoping to meet someone before he went to school the next day. That way he wouldn't be alone, he would have at least one friend. He saw a diner on the left side of the road. He turned into the car park and parked his truck in an empty space. Everyone in the vicinity turned around and watched him as he walked across the lot and into the diner. The same thing happened when he stepped across the threshold. Everyone went quiet and turned to look at him. Trying to ignore the numerous stares, Hadrian sat down and looked at the menu, waiting for the waitress to come and take his order. A young girl, with dark brown, wilted curled hair, dressed in a red and white uniform, approached the table. "Hi. I'm Jessica, and I will be taking your order today. What can I get you?" she asked, with a smile on her face. Hadrian could practically read her mind. Who is he? Where did he come from? Is he staying? Does he have a girlfriend? "Hello, I'm Hadrian Potter Swan," he replied, unsure of what last name he should use. Before quickly deciding on both, he wasn't going to hide who he was. "And can I get a simple beef burger with onions, lettuce, mustard, cheese, and tomato, thank you." "Oh, and a plain water as well." "Thanks," Hadrian ordered, smiling at the waitress. He looked around at the other patrons, and inwardly smirked at the looks of shock that every CNGLE occupant of the diner currently wore. Jessica came back out and placed his meal on the table, and left him with a wink. He started to eat the burger, still looking around, and still being looked at. A young man walked up to him, and stuck his hand out for him to shake. "I'm Mike Newton." "Did you say your last name was Swan?" Mike was tall, not basketball player tall, but definitely taller than Hadrian. He had a round, baby face, with perfectly gelled spikes in his blonde hair. He was cute, and strongly reminded Hadrian of Draco. Hadrian accepted the hand, and nodded, "Yup," popping the P slightly. He gestured to the seat across from him. "My full name is Hadrian Potter Swan. Though I think I'll just stick with Swan when I'm living here." Mike accepted the offered seat, wanting to get to know the new boy more. "Does that mean you're Chief Swan's son?" Hadrian nodded. "Cool. Like I said, I'm Mike. Short for Michael. Do you mind if I give you a shorter name, Hadrian?" he asked. King that Hadrian was a bit of a mouthful. Hadrian was unsure of what to say. "Sure. Only thing I won't use is Harry. That is who I used to be, but not anymore." He nodded, as if that would make the statement all the more true. "Well, okay then. How about Ian?" He received a shake of the head at that. Adrian, Adri, shake, shake, shake. What about, Ryan?" Mike said, unsure of the sound of it. Hadrian thought about this one. "Ryan. Yeah, Ryan. I like that. Thanks, Mike. Anyways, I have to be going now. I'll see you at school tomorrow." "Yeah?" he asked, placing money on the table. Mike nodded, and Hadrian left, excited about what the new school year would bring. Going home, Hadrian greeted Charlie, and asked about his room. He followed Charlie as he was led up the stairs and down until the end of the hall. He took note of the other rooms. Across from the stairs was a small bathroom, and there were, besides what he assumed was his room, 2 other doors in the hall. One he guessed was Charlie's, and the other a spare, or guest room. He looked up when Charlie stopped walking, and walked into the room. It was large and looked very nice. On the far wall was a window which opened to the front of the house, and the street below. The double bed was tucked into a raised alcove, on the left side of his room. It also had a window just above the side of the bed. There was a desk against the wall with the main window, and a chest of drawers against the right wall. The bed looked to be made of a black wood, and appeared to be very comfortable. It was made with a black quilt on it, and black and silver pillows. The desk was slightly old-fashioned but still nice. It was also made of black wood, and fit in well with the rest of the room. The drawers were the same wood as the bed and desk, just with old-fashioned silver handles. The main walls were a nice creamy white color, with the alcove painted black. There was a nice black and silver rug on the floor, which Hadrian bent down to touch. Needless to say, if Hadrian ever tired of the bed, he would be able to just lay on the floor. He stood up, staring around the room, before turning back to Charlie. "I love it, Dad." Charlie smiled. "I'll leave you, let you rest. You start school tomorrow. Good night, I'll see you in the morning." Hadrian looked up at his father and smiled, watching as his father closed the door behind him. He again looked around the room, his room, before running and jumping onto the bed. He was right, it was really comfy. His eyes started to droop down as he sighed. Life was good now. Not a minute later, Hadrian had fallen asleep. "Hey guys, I hope that you guys have all had a very Merry Christmas. I know I did. Who wouldn't if they received a laptop from Santa? I am sorry that this has taken so long to be put up. But I have not been feeling well. I mean, who gets a cold in summer, and to top it off, on Christmas New Year's week, me obviously. Unfortunately, my grandparents never owned their cat. We are still hoping someone remembers something or finds him, but we recognize that that probably won't happen." In total, 320 flyers were printed off, 4 printer cartridges were used. $74.50 was spent on placing a single ad in the newspaper Adelaide Messenger for a week. Sad face. Other than that, my Christmas was good. As I said, I got a laptop, meaning updates to my stories should happen faster. As well as no Christmas means not as busy. Did anyone else see the Doctor Who Christmas special? I downloaded it, wouldn't have seen it until February otherwise. I loved it. Thom Dissap pointed that there will only be 3 of 4 David Tennant episodes left, depending on if he does the '09 Christmas special as well, and only 5 Torchwood episodes this year, so not fair. Enough of my ramblings. Until next time, wishing y'all a very happy new year. Matsuda-chan. P.S. Reviews always make my day. Please leave any comments. If you like it, tell me why. If you don't, please again, tell me why so can fix it. P.P.S. I am still looking for a beta, if anyone would like that role, MC. Chapter 6. Hadrian woke up the next morning to his alarm clock going off. Looking up at his roof, all he could do was say, "Well, here starts my new life." A smile creeps onto the face of the young man. "Let's go." The quilt cover is flung back and Hadrian stands out of bed. There are movements coming from downstairs. Walking down into the kitchen, Hadrian sees Charlie at the stovetop, cooking something. Deciding not to interrupt his father, he turns to sit at the small table, when he spots what he assumed was going to be breakfast. The table was set, with plates, placemats, cutlery, and toppings. There was a basket of burnt toast, a stack of black pancakes, a bowl of runny eggs, at least that was it or not. Charlie walked over, and placed a plate of crispy, and by crispy, overdone, bacon. They both looked over the food, waiting for the other person to start. Glancing up at each other, they stood, took 2 dishes each, and walked to the bin, dumping the food in it, before Charlie reached up and bought out a box of Cocoa Pops, and 2 bowls. Hadrian smiled and nodded, grabbed one of the bowls and walked to the fridge. Grabbing a carton of milk and walked back to the table. "So," Charlie started the conversation, rather awkwardly, "are you ready for your first day at a new school?" Hadrian froze. Was he ready for a new school, for new friends? Now he wasn't so sure. Last time he had attended a Muggle school, he was bullied by his cousin and his friends. Last time he had no friends at all. How was he so sure that he would make new friends? And then he remembered Mike. He had made a new friend last night, hopefully he would still want to be friends. He looked at Charlie, who had a weird look on his face. Yeah. He nodded. I'll be fine. I met a guy, Mike Newton, last night. So everything should be fine. Charlie's face changed. Now he was smiling. Hadrian looked at the time and decided that he had to go get ready. So after saying goodbye to Charlie and washing his plate, he went upstairs. After having a shower, Hadrian started to search through his clothes, looking or something that wouldn't be too flashy. Too bad he didn't find anything like that. Damn purebloods and their need to show off their money. Narcissa had decided that he needed new clothes if he was to be the Evans Potter Malfoy Black Heir. Clothes that should show off who he was and how rich he was. She then proceeded to throw away every other piece of clothing he owned. Sighing, he decided on a pair of tight black skinny leg jeans. That left very little to the imagination, an emerald green silk shirt, and black custom-made Converses with emerald green lightning bolts down the side, and a black bikie gang leather jacket. He tied his long black hair up at the base of his neck, and placed a minimal amount of black eyeliner around his eyes. Once again glad that Draco had made him get eye correction surgery for their wedding. He looked into the floor-length mirror that hung on the back of his bedroom door. I look hot, he thought, and with a wink at his reflection, grabbed his black shoulder bag and keys before walking down the stairs and out to his truck, smiling the whole way. Pulling into the school parking lot, Hadrian noticed the range of cars that were in the lot. Most were like his, old and run down, but still running. But there were a few that looked like they were semi-new. There was even what looked like a brand new Volvo, hoping that this meant other rich kids, with good clothes. He walked into the office. After receiving a form that he was required to get all his teachers to sign, he walked around, learning where all the buildings were, noting which would be his classes. He kept an eye out for Mike, but didn't see him. Hadrian guessed he wasn't here yet. He walked back out to his car, when he saw Mike standing with some of what were obviously Mike's friends. Hadrian wasn't sure if he should walk up to Mike and join in with that group, or if he should wait and see if Mike would invite him over. Luckily, before Hadrian could decide, Mike noticed him standing there, and beckoned him over. Hadrian complied and joined the group. Mike quickly introduced everyone. This is Jessica Stanley. Hadrian recognized her as the waitress from the diner last night, Lauren Mallory, Angela Weber, Eric Yorkie, Tyler Crowley, and Ben Chaney. He pointed to everyone as he said their names. Guys, this is Hadrian Potter Swan. That's right, isn't it? He checked, making sure he had the name right. Yeah, that's all the names I use at least. But please, just call me Ryan. Hadrian is a bit of mouthful. He told everyone, mentally going over their faces and names, storing them in his memory. All the names you use. What? Have your folks remarried or something? Is that how you can afford those clothes? You have two mums and dads paying for them. Lauren sneered, obviously not liking the clothes Hadrian wore, or even Hadrian himself. Hadrian looked down, taking a deep breath before raising his head and glaring at Lauren straight in the eye. She staggered back a few steps as she took in the glare. Everyone else looked on in shock and awe. Someone finally stood up to Lauren. First of all, my parents, they died when I was 15 months old. Second, yes, the names I use. My full name is Hadrian James Charles Potter Malfoy Black Swan. Potter after the parents who died to save me, Malfoy after my new family, who made me their heir, Black after my godfather, who also named me his heir, and Swan after my biological father, and the only blood relative I have left. Next issue. My clothes. Does it really bother you that much, that I have better clothes than you do? Just so you know, every dollar I spent on these clothes came from bank accounts that either I own, or will one day own due to my inheritances. He spoke clearly to Lauren. The venom in his voice grew more and more as he spoke. Turning to Mike, Hadrian apologized. Sorry Mike. But for now, I can't be around stuck-up gits like her. I'll see you guys all later, K. The rest of the group just nodded. Hadrian turned and walked back towards the school building, remembering where his first class was. As Hadrian walked, he took more notice of the other students as he looked around. When he saw them sitting on the grass were 4 teenagers, 2 girls and 2 guys. The first girl looked shorter than Hadrian. She had short spiky black hair. She was thin, really thin, and had small features. Altogether she looked like a pixie. She was really beautiful, in fact all of them were, especially the other girl. She was much taller than the pixie girl, and had long blonde hair. From what age? Adrian could see she had a figure all girls would kill for, maybe except the little pixie. Blondie could have easily been on the cover of Swimsuit Illustrated. Each girl had their head in the lap of one of the guys. Blondie's guy was muscled, bodybuilder muscled, and tall. He had short, dark curly hair. Pix's was tall, but not nearly as tall as Muscles. He looked to be lanky, with untidy, bronze-colored hair. They all had the same eyes, though they did vary in shades. They were a brilliant topaz. They also had the same skin tone, a very pale white, almost as if they never got any sun, even more than the other Forks kids. Hadrian was about to walk up to them and introduce himself, when the bell rang. The 4 students stood up, and walked off to class. Everyone ignored them, and they ignored everyone. Hadrian continued looking in the place they once were for a few more moments, before walking off to his class, English. He walked into the room, handing his form to the teacher, Mr. Mason. He stared at the name slightly before sending Hadrian to the back of the room, across from Eric, one of the boys he had met earlier. Eric nodded, before turning back to his book list. Hadrian looked down at his own. It contained people like Shakespeare and Faulkner on it, fairly basic. The last of the students had sat down now, and Mr. Mason stood at the front of the room, ready to address the class, when the headmaster walked through the door. He walked over to Mr. Mason and whispered something in his ear. Mr. Mason just nodded. The head turned around to face the class before speaking. Good morning, students. I hope that you are ready for school. I'm speaking to every class this morning, so I may see you next class. These past few weeks the school board have been talking to 2 men from the United Kingdom. They have been investing their time and money into small town schools around the world. They have decided to donate money to our school, and have in turn been graciously welcomed onto the school board. They are only here for a few days to sort out some small details, and so I offered to take them on a tour of the school, and introduce them to the students. So, I will let them say a few words, if they wish. Please welcome our school's newest board members, Mr. Lucius Malfoy, and Mr. Cyrus Black. Everyone but Hadrian started to clap. Hadrian just sat there before saying, "What? You guys are on the board here, at this school, Forks High School?" Hadrian asked slowly. The clapping had stopped, everyone turning to look at him, their mouths hanging wide open. Any reason in particular you choose to start donating your money here? After seeing Hadrian had finished speaking, everyone's heads lashed around to face the 2 men. Lucius and Sirius tried to look innocent, not pulling it off very well. Sirius talked first. Yup. We're on the board, here, at this school. Isn't that awesome? It's like being a teacher. A look of sheer dread crossed Sirius' face. No. I've turned into Moony. Sirius looked down, a sad look on his face. Lucius was unsure of what to do. His face showed it, so he just started to pat Sirius on the back, before turning to Hadrian. Harry, we are sorry that we didn't tell you we would be doing this. But with you not being with us at home, we had nothing to do. So the mud over here thought that we could help your school, which would also give us a reason to see you from time to time. We are sorry, but truth be told, Narcissa was going to kick us out of the manor soon if we didn't find something. Lucius explained. Sirius had obviously gotten over his little fit, because he was nodding his head enthusiastically at what Lucius said. Fine, you're not forgiven, but even I know how Narcissa gets. Now, Siri, Luke, ya think you can leave now? He asked, shaking his head at them. They nodded quickly and left the room, with the headmaster following behind them. Mr. Mason regained his senses and called the class, whom were all staring at Hadrian, to order. As the bell went, signaling the end of class, Hadrian packed up and waited for Eric, asking what he was next. Building 4, you, he got in reply. In 6, I have government with Jefferson. Whatever that is, I'll walk with you. He smiled, and they both walked off, heading in the direction of both their rooms. That was pretty nice what you did to Lauren earlier. She is nice once you get to know her. She just doesn't like rich people who think that they are too good for the rest of us, not that you are, or anything, he said, rubbing the back of his head as he finished. So, those two guys, Malfoy and Black, are they the ones in your family, the guys you're heir to? Hadrian nodded. Yeah, Sirius is my godfather, and Lucius is my dad in a way. They are pretty cool. They both stopped walking as they reached Building 4. Cool. This is me, I guess. I'll see you at lunch. Yeah. I'll show you why Lauren didn't like ya. Later, dude. Hadrian just nodded as he started walking again, reaching his room not long after. The rest of the morning went boringly quick. Hadrian still was unsure if what government was all about. He found out he was useless at trigonometry, but was all right at Spanish, though nowhere near as good as the rest of his class. Before he knew it, lunch had come. He walked into the cafeteria, looking around to see if he could see Mike or Eric. They weren't there yet, but he did see Jessica and Angela walking in front of them. He quickly caught up. Together they grabbed their food, and sat down at a table in the middle of the room. Glancing around he saw the 4 people from earlier, though they were now joined by another boy. He had the same pale skin and topaz eyes as the rest. He looked to be tall, and was muscled, not to the extent of muscles, but more so than bronze hair. He had longish golden blonde hair that was pushed away from his face. "They're the Cullens," came a voice from next to Hadrian. Turning to look, he saw Jessica continue talking. "They moved down here from Alaska like 2 years ago. They are all foster kids of Dr. Cullen and his wife. The big muscled one is Emmett, the blonde girl is Rosalie, and the blonde guy is Jasper. The one with the bronze hair is Edward, and the small pixie girl is Alice. Rosalie and Jasper are twins, Mrs. Cullen's niece and nephew or something, and they use Hale as their last name. Alice uses Brandon as her last name, and she is like Dr. Cullen's niece. Edward and Emmett are the only ones not related to the Dr. or Mrs. Cullen somehow. They were adopted when their parents died, I think." Hadrian took this all in, staring at the blonde guy, Jasper. He couldn't look away. "Are they single?" he asked, not sure on what he saw this morning. "Jasper is. Rosalie and Emmett are together, as are Alice and Edward. Most of the school's population are upset that they never had a chance. The girls are upset that they can't go out with the guys, and the guys are upset they can't go out with the girls. But Jasper, he's single, isn't he? You just said he was." Hadrian looked at Jessica. He was now utterly confused, unless maybe he stood a chance with the blonde. "Oh, Jasper is gay." Hadrian's heart leapt, something it hadn't done since Draco. He had a chance. He was sure his emotions were probably going haywire now, but he really didn't care. He turned away from Jessica, looking back at the table. He was shocked when he saw the group staring at him. Bronze hair, Edward, looked confused, which in turn confused Hadrian. Rosalie looked upset, before she looked at Jasper, who had a face of pure happiness, and nodded before smiling, which only confused Hadrian even more. Alice had a glazed-over sort of look, which reminded him of Luna Lovegood. When she blinked her eyes returned to normal, and her smile reached from ear to ear, as she whispered something. Emmett was now laughing out loud, and boy was it loud. Hadrian was shocked out of his watching. Mike and Eric came and sat down at the table, changing the talk of the conversation. Hadrian quickly looked back, only to see them gracefully walk out the door. He turned back around, and listened to the talk that was going on. The bell went soon after, and Hadrian headed off to his next class, biology, with Angela and Mike. They didn't talk on the way. Hadrian got the idea that Angela was shy. As they entered the room, Angela walked off to her desk, and Hadrian approached the teacher with his form. He was shown where to sit, the only spare seat, right next to Edward Cullen. He sat down, nodding his head in Edward's direction. Edward looked up, surprised that he had been acknowledged, and nodded back. The confused, yet happy look was back on his face. "I'm Edward Cullen, but I'm sure Psalm E1 has already told you that in my family's story." Hadrian looked at his neighbor, Ryan. "I'm sure you heard that as well. It's nice to meet you, Edward. Jessica Stanley told me your story at lunch. I hope you don't mind." Upset that he might have offended the boy next to him by prying. "Of course not. Don't worry about knowing. Everyone else knows it, so why shouldn't you?" Any further talk was cut short as Mr. Banner started to talk to his class. There was no more chance for talking during the class, and when the bell went Edward rushed out of the room, so there was no chance for talk after. Hadrian wandered over to Mike, and they walked off together. "I've got gym, what about you?" was asked, and a nod, and the single word, "same," were all that was said as the two boys walked to the gym. The teacher told Hadrian that he wouldn't need to play today, but to be ready for tomorrow. So Hadrian went and sat in the bleachers, watching the class and students, when Jasper Hale, and Emmett and Alice Cullen walked. Or in Alice's case, skipped, through the doors, dressed in their gym clothes. They had managed to look beautiful even in the ugly, boring clothes. The lesson passed quickly, and when the bell went, Hadrian quickly left, walking to the office to hand in his form. After he gave it to the office admin, he walked back out to the parking lot, and seeing Mike, he started to walk over to say goodbye. "Ryan." Hadrian turned around at the sound of his name, as did half of the people in the lot. "Alice." Alice ran, quickly catching up to Hadrian. "I wanted to formally meet you." She smiled. "I hope we can be friends, there is just something magical about you. Do you wanna come round our house? You can learn more about our family, and we can learn more about the boy who lived to move to Forks." Hadrian was shaken. Magical, boy who lived to move to Forks. That was either a rather big coincidence, or little Alice Cullen knew about him. He would have to find out, and the only way to do that would be to. "Sure, I would love to come round. Do you want to drive with me, or me follow you?" "You can follow us. See you soon." With a small wave and a smile, Alice ran back to her siblings, into Edward's arms. They all had a confused look, but none questioned Alice as they hopped into the car. Turning around, Hadrian waved at Mike and the rest of his new friends before getting in his truck and driving off after the Volvo. At the first set of lights he texted Charlie. "Hey, going to Cullen's for a bit. Be home later, I'll pick up dinner along the way, pizza okay?" Hadrian. The lights turned green, and the Volvo sped off. Hadrian sped after it, unsure of what was to come. Chapter 7. Hadrian followed the Volvo out of the town. The car in front turned on its indicator, and it was then Hadrian noticed the small dirt road that went off into the surrounding woods. He followed down this road, and after a few miles, saw a house. It stood alone, surrounded by trees, and other plant life. The house was beautiful, some would say timeless. It looked as if it could have been 100 years old. It had 3 stories, and was painted a soft, faded white color. The windows and doors looked original, or a perfect restoration. Besides the silver Volvo in front of Hadrian's truck, there were no cars in sight. The slight rushing of a river could be heard, hidden by the forest. Knock. Hadrian was drawn out of his thoughts to see Alice standing on the other side of the passenger window. She held up her hand, beckoning him to come in. Hadrian stepped out of the car, and was surrounded by the sound of the wind in the trees, the birds chirping, and the smell of the forest. He followed his friends. No, his fellow students. He followed them as they walked through the front door. If the outside of the house was beautiful, the inside was exquisite. It looked as though the walls separating the first floor rooms had been taken out, making most of the floor one huge room. The whole back wall had been replaced by glass, and Hadrian could see the river that was behind the massive green lawn. There was a round staircase that stood in the back right-hand corner. Against the right wall, on a raised platform, was a white grand piano. Standing by the piano was a woman. She had the same pale, but beautiful features as the rest of the family did. Her heart-shaped face, her caramel-colored hair, made her seem all the more motherly. She was small, slender but less angular than the rest of her family. Unlike her children, Esme, Hadrian guessed that was who she was, as he only had yet to meet Dr. Cullen now, was dressed casually. She obviously didn't care about brand-name clothing, unlike her children. Esme stepped forward, sweeping Hadrian into a motherly hug, which he returned graciously. "Hello, I'm Esme. Ryan, it's a pleasure to meet you." Hadrian introduced himself to her, as she let go of him. Esme gestured towards the sofas and coffee table that were set up by the stairs and piano. "Please sit." The group sat down. No one else talked, unsure of what to say. Can I get you anything, Ryan? Asked Esme, gesturing to a room just off the main one. Most of the wall had been taken out, but there was a part still there. It looked as though it had been done to form a bench. Hadrian shook his head. I'm all right, thanks. He turned to the other teens that sat on the sofas across from him. What did you guys want to talk to me about? He looked at each of them in turn. Jasper was the one to speak. Carlisle, our father, will be home in a minute. We'll talk when he gets here. An awkward silence fell as Jasper finished. No one else spoke or even moved. Hadrian looked around, taking in more. Covering the walls were paintings and photos. There were photos of different houses, all expensive looking and beautiful like this one. There were old-fashioned paintings done of the family, both separately, couples, and one as a family. There were photos of the family doing little, family bonding things. There was something slightly weird about the photos and paintings, but before Hadrian could realize what that was, the front door opened and closed. Jumping, Hadrian looked up to see a man start to walk towards them. Hadrian assumed this was Dr. Cullen, as he wore a doctor's coat, which said Doctor Cullen on the pocket. He still held a briefcase in his hand. He was young, too young Hadrian thought to be a doctor. He had slicked back blonde hair, and he was one of the most handsome men he had ever laid eyes on. He was pale, just like the other occupants in the room, with dark circles under his eyes. He shared the same beautiful features as the others, including the eyes. He had the same golden color eyes as his wife and children. Carlisle noticed Hadrian sitting there, and extended his hand. I'm Drive. Carlisle Cullen. You must be Hadrian Swan. You being in town has caused quite a stir. No one knew you existed. But that is for another time. What can my family and I do for you? He spoke with a slight British accent, and his voice was just as beautiful as his family's. I'm not really sure. Alice invited me to get to know you and your family, Hadrian replied. And quickly added on sir, to the end. Dr. Cullen held up his hand. It's Carlisle, please. He turned to Alice. Care to tell the group why our young friend is here? Sure. Alice was jumping in her seat. She looked as though she was excited about something. Ryan is going to be one of us. Everyone else but Hadrian gasped, looking from Alice to Hadrian and back again. Alice couldn't control herself anymore. She rushed over to the sofa Hadrian was on, and hugged him. Hadrian was confused. What did they mean, one of them? One of you. What are you? He asked, voicing his thoughts. The family looked away, unsure of how to tell him. What do you think we are? Came from the pixie girl sitting next to him. Well, you are all incredibly beautiful. You are all pale. You all share the same color eyes. Though you aren't related, except Jasper and Rosalie, and Emmett and Edward, so why do you all look the same? You didn't eat at lunch today, and none of you had anything when we arrived. He stopped to take a breath, pointing at Alice, Emmett, and Jasper. During gym, the three of you didn't sweat, or appear to look tired, though you all ran the whole time. When we were waiting for Carlisle to arrive, you either didn't move, or you repeated the same thing over and over. He looked around the room, seeing the photos and paintings once again, and he realized what was wrong about them. And you haven't aged in years, if not decades or centuries. The family in front of him reeled in shock, staring at the young boy. You got all of that from today. You got that we don't age from today at school? Edward asked, confusion, and a hint of wonder, in his voice. No, everyone knows about your beauty and your looks, but no one thinks of how odd it is that you look similar. But are not related. You don't allow anyone to be near you or your family, so no one notices in gym when you look like you did at the start of the lesson. At lunch, PLE are more interested in their friends to notice you don't move much, or that you don't eat. The photos and paintings you have on your wall, you all look exactly the same as you did when they were all done. The paintings look to be from a while ago, decades at least. I thought something was odd about them when I first noticed them, but it wasn't until then that I realized what it was. Normally, people wouldn't have noticed these things, but I've been trained to. Where I came from there was a war, and I was on the front lines. Hadrian looked around. Esme and Rosalie had a look of sympathy on their faces. Alice's smile had gone down, though it was still slightly there. Edward and Emmett's faces were blank, as if they weren't sure what to do. Carlyle's face held a look of compassion. Jasper's face was pained, as of remembering long-gone memories. His hands ran up and down his arms, where, what looked to be scars littered his arms. I received training, to help me in the war. Part of the training was to be able to notice small things, little things that could later be used to help us. Hadrian stopped there, not wanting to tell these people too much, without knowing who they were, and what they wanted. He assumed that they were some kind of creature, but was not able to recognize what. They looked, in a way, like the Vila he had seen at the World Cup, but the Amelie in front of him were too beautiful to be Vila, and they didn't eat or age. The only creatures he had come across in the war were werewolves, and the Cullens weren't werewolves. Voldemort had gone to several races of creatures for help, but none had accepted, except the werewolves and the vampires. Hadrian hadn't been a part of the war with the vampires. Everyone thought it was too dangerous. They wouldn't want Hadrian to become a vampire if he got attacked. That was when it hit him. Vampire. He said quietly, "You are all vampires." Hadrian looked up to see everyone looking at him, shocked that he had been able to guess their secret. Jasper stood up, kneeling in front of Hadrian. "Yes. We are vampires, though we call ourselves vegetarian." He smiled slightly, as if there was a joke Hadrian did not know about. "It means we don't live off of human blood, we live purely off of the blood of animals." Hadrian was shocked. Ever since the nomad vampires had entered the war, he learned about how all they did was thirst for human blood, how they needed to kill humans to survive. In defense against the dark arts, he had learned that vampires were evil, and ought to be killed on sight. But sitting here, meeting this family, he was confused. They say they don't kill humans, yet they still live, making lies of everything that he had ever learnt. If you are vampires, how do you go out during the day? Stories and legends say that vampires will turn to dust the moment they step into the sunlight, Hadrian asked, purely curious. The Cullens laughed, all making different sounds. Emmett's mighty guffaw. Alice's light giggle, weird and interesting sound they made as a family, but still a sound an orchestra would kill to have. That is a myth. Whilst we can be outside during the day and can step out into the sun, we do cause a scene if that happens. All legends are based on some truth. This particular one is just over-exaggerated. Anything else? Jasper replied, never once taking his eyes away from Hadrian's. No. His answer came out as more of a question, then a statement. Oh, wait. If you guys, did live on human blood, would you be able to get AIDS? Hadrian started to laugh at the expressions that he received from his company. Every single one of their mouths dropped, except Jasper, who was just laughing. And, if you guys don't have a reflection in the mirror, how do you always look so awesome? Jasper was now full on laughing, and the others' mouths had fallen even further towards the floor, which Hadrian wasn't sure was possible. To answer your questions, 1. We could. If it were possible for our bodies to change. It is like our bodies are frozen. We don't age, get sick, or anything, making it impossible for us to contract disease, like AIDS, from the blood. 2. That would be another myth. We do have a reflection. Otherwise we probably wouldn't look this awesome. Jasper smiled as he answered. Ah, Hadrian replied. He turned to Alice. So, I'm going to become a vampire, am I? Was there anything else you wanted me here for? He asked. Alice looked up at the boy from her seat next to him. Yup. You're gonna be one of us. Isn't that awesome? She asked, standing up and moving back over to his place next to Edward. Jasper stood up from the floor, taking the place his sister had just moved from. That isn't all. We're going to tell you about us, our stories, powers, everything. Then when we finish, you are going to tell us about you. Edward and I already know what you are going to tell us, but we didn't tell anyone. That is for you to do. How do you know? Hadrian asked, confused. He had only told Charlie of his past since arriving. How was it that he two people in front of him knew? Carlyle took over the explanation from there. Certain vampires have special powers, different from the average abilities of better sight and hearing, and super strength and speed. These powers, I believe, come from your human life. Take Edward. During his human years, he was able, to some extent, to be able to tell round about what someone was thinking. Now, he can hear any person's thoughts. Edward started mumbling under his breath, sorry. He can hear anyone's but yours. Your mind is a blank to him. Then there is Alice. Not much is known about her human life, but we know she had visions of some sort, and was semi-able to see into the future. Now, she can see visions, depending on someone's decision, of what will happen. These visions are subjective. They will change as soon as someone changes their mind. The last, main, power, is Jasper's. He has the ability to alter a person's emotions. He can tell what someone is feeling, and if it is strong enough, will act on it. Hadrian took this in, never before hearing of a vampire with powers. Those are the main powers. Though the rest of us do have an extra gift, of some sort, Esme loves so very passionately and unconditionally. I have been told that I am more compassionate than most others. Emmett is a lot stronger than the average vampire, except newborns of course, and Rosalie is more beautiful than other vampires, but she also has a higher tenacity than most. Edward coughed. Though it sounded more like the word pigheadedness, the others laughed, except Rosalie, who just glared at him. Before Carlyle could continue any more, Hadrian's phone went off, receiving a text from Charlie. Sorry to bother you. There are some people here who want to speak to you. They say their names are Gred, Forge, Bill and Charlie. What do you want me to do with them? Dad. Hadrian looked back up. Sorry. I have to go. Some of my friends from the UK are here. I have to go find out what they want. I'll see you guys tomorrow, in school. He asked, and when he received nods, he said goodbye and left. When he got in his truck, he put the key in and turned it on, texting Charlie as he did. On my way home. Tell them to wait, I'll talk to them. Arriving home, Hadrian noticed that there was a car sitting in the driveway, meaning that the four Weasleys that still talked to him, or hoped they would, in Bill and Charlie's case, were planning on staying for a while. In the wizarding world, being gay usually didn't matter, as, just like in the Muggle world, there were ways to still have children and heirs. Though there were still a few families who believed that being gay was wrong. These families were either a Muggle-born family, had a Muggle born in them, or were close to a Muggle-born. This was one of the reasons why pure-bloods wanted to get rid of the Muggle-borns. They brought in their prejudices, and wanted to change the way that the wizarding people lived. Hundreds of years ago, vampires and werewolves weren't hunted or even hated. Vampires were still treated with caution every day, but were allowed to live their lives the way they wanted. Werewolves were only feared of the day of, and the days before and after the full moon. But when the wizards began mixing with the Muggles, and Muggle-born children were allowed to enter the wizarding world, they brought their stories, saying that werewolves and vampires were bad. This is why Hadrian had lost his family, the Weasleys. When he first came out, Ron didn't care, but Hermione did, and Hadrian told Ron to stay with Hermione, as they were dating. Hermione then proceeded to convince Ron, who then convinced most of his family, that being gay was unnatural. Even when Fred and George came out, they believed it was wrong, and the twins were kicked out of the family. At this point, Bill and Charlie weren't in the country, only moving when the war got really bad, so he had never really found out what Charlie and Bill thought. Hadrian guessed he would now. He got out of his truck, locking the door behind him, and walked to his front door. He listened for a second, and not hearing anything he went inside. Fred, George, Charlie, Bill, and Char his father were sitting in the living room. Hadrian sat down, turning to the four Weasley men. What are you guys doing here? How did you find me? They all looked at each other before Bill spoke. Harry, it's Hadrian now, or Ryan for short, Hadrian interrupted. I left Harry behind in Britain. Ryan, then, me and Charlie just want to say that we think what our family did was wrong. We don't care that you're gay, you are our little brother. Hadrian nodded, knowing Bill had more to say, but that isn't why we came here. Unfortunately, the Order discovered where you are, and our family is here. Ron and Ginny will be attending Forks High with you. Ron will be a senior, so the year above you, and Ginny a junior, your year. We didn't want them to surprise you, but we thought you had to know. Hadrian nodded, not sure on what to say. We have to go now. See ya, little brother. The four hugged Hadrian before leaving the house. Charlie looked at his son, worried about what was going to happen. "Do you want me to go get that pizza now?" he asked. "No, I'm just going to go to bed. Night." Hadrian walked slowly up to the stairs, walking into his room. He didn't even take off the clothes that he was wearing, just laid down on the bed and falling asleep. Hadrian woke up the next morning, and was happy. Then he remembered the day before. The Cullens were vampires, which he didn't care about. Ron and Ginny were attending his school. That, he did worry about. At least Ron wouldn't be in his class. He was too old to be accepted as a junior. Ginny, however, was young enough. He wasn't sure who would be worse, Ron or Ginny. He was going to find out. He got ready for school quickly, and walked outside, ready to drive to school. He was shocked when he saw a black motorcycle parked in the drive. Jasper was sitting on the seat, an extra helmet in his lap. "Want a ride to school?" Hadrian nodded, accepting the helmet and sat behind Jasper in the seat. The ride to school was quick, though Hadrian wished it had taken longer. Then he would have missed the confrontation that took place in the parking lot. When Jasper parked the bike in the lot, the other 3 Cullens stepped out of the Volvo that was already parked, walking towards Hadrian and Jasper. Alice hugged him when they finally reached each other. "Did you have fun?" she asked with a smile on her face. Truth was, Hadrian loved the ride. Not only did he get to be close to Jasper, but he loved the feeling of the wind rushing on either side of you. He nodded, answering Alice's question. "I loved it. By the way, what kind of bike is it?" He turned to Jasper. "A Ducati 848. Any further conversation was cut off when a red Volkswagen Rabbit pulled into the parking lot and parked near where the group were standing. 3 people got out. A tall boy, with dark skin, and long black hair, put his arm around the waist of a small red-haired girl, kissing her on the cheek. Another boy started walking forward, followed by the other 2. He was tall, though not quite as tall as the other boy. Had bright red hair, and freckles all over his face. Together, they walked up to Hadrian and the Cullens. Most students stopped and watched, though Mike Newton and his friends, the friends Hadrian had made yesterday, walked up, and stood behind Hadrian, ready for a fight. The red-head boy smiled, and said, "Hello Harry. How are you?" He looked over at Jasper, who was close to Hadrian. "Have a new boyfriend already, whore? I mean, Draco only died a few months ago. Remember him, your bastard of a husband?" Everyone gasped, looking between the 2 boys. People were whispering things like, "He's gay. Married. He's only young. Him and Hale." No way. Hadrian stood still, listening to what everyone was saying, before he finally spoke. "Ron, Ginny's new boyfriend. I'm fine. I hope you and your family is as well." "No, Jasper and I aren't going out, at least," he said, a smirk appearing on his face. "Not yet. No, I haven't forgotten about how did you put it, my bastard of a husband, Draco. And I'm not the whore here. If anyone is, it's Ginny." Turning to the other boy he said, "Word of warning buddy, Ginny will do anything, anywhere, anytime, so I would watch her." Hadrian turned and walked away, heading up to the school. Jasper followed behind him, and when they were out of sight, he stopped Hadrian, and made him face him. "Back there, did you mean it when you said we weren't going out yet?" he asked, hopeful. "Yes, I did mean it. But Jazz, you have to know. I do come with a past. Up until a few months ago, I was married, and I loved Draco so much. After he died, I realized that I didn't love him as much as I thought I did, and yes, it was easier to get over him. I can't ever fully replace him." Hadrian spoke, not fully looking at Jasper, but not quite looking away. Jasper smiled at the nickname, liking the way Hadrian said it. "I understand," he started, but was cut off. "It's not just that. I was born during war. Yes, for a while, there was a break. But when I was 14, that war started again. All I really know is how to fight. I'm not perfect, and I never will be." It was Jasper's turn to cut Hadrian off. "I know what you mean. Last night, you left before we could tell you our stories. Listen to mine," he said slowly. "When I was human, I live in Houston, Texas. When I was a teenager, there was a war going on, the Civil War. At 17 I decided I wanted to join the Confederate Army. I said I was older than I truly was. They wouldn't have let me in otherwise. I was well liked and could change, to a certain extent, what people could feel. This helped me move up the ranks, until I was Major Jasper Whitlock. 3 years after I joined, I was attacked by a vampire named Maria. She was creating a newborn army, and she thought that as I was a high-ranking army man, I would be able to help. I stayed with her for about a century, before I had enough. I left with 2 friends, Peter and Charlotte, but left them eventually. I wandered on my own, until I met Alice. Together we found Carlisle and the rest of the family. We have been with them ever since. Hadrian didn't know what to say, so he did the only thing he could think of. Hadrian stepped closer to Jasper and kissed him. Hey, here is the next chapter. I forgot to do this last time, but I want to thank Makuriyami Ukami for baiting this story for me. Thank you so much. I need some help. I am looking for a Harry Potter fanfiction. It is a Harry Snape, where Harry lives on the streets, and goes by the name of London. Snape finds him, but doesn't he? L. Dumbledore for a while. Snape lets Harry and his friend use his flat house while he is at Hogwarts. If anyone happens to know what story I am talking about, please tell me in a review, or PM me. I am dying to read this story again. Till next time, Matsuda-chan. Chapter 8. The kiss lasted but a second as Hadrian pulled away, confused at his actions. Jasper stood there, a far-off look in his golden eyes. Jasper looked down at the smaller boy and smiled. Any reason in particular you did that for? He asked. Sorry, I wasn't sure what to say. I gotta go, he murmured, so low that a human wouldn't have been unable to hear. Before he started to walk off to his first class. Thoughts running wild in his head. Why did I do that? I only met him yesterday, I don't even know him. Contrary to popular belief, Hadrian didn't rush into things, not when he had another way, which is why his actions were so confusing. His romantic experience was a very short list, consisting of the dreadful date that he had with Cho Chang in his 5th year, briefly dating Ginny Weasley during 6th, his Muggle neighbor during the summer holidays between 6th and 7th years, and finally, Draco. He was the longest, and most important, relationship that Hadrian had had. They were married for under a year, and though Hadrian had now realized that the love they shared was influenced greatly by the upcoming war, he did love Draco. Just not as much as he had believed he had. But now, here was someone who he barely knew, yet was bringing out things that he hadn't felt or done before. When he had first seen Jasper the day before in the cafeteria, his heart had flipped. All he could think about was the boy. By the time lunch came around, 4 lessons were still not enough for Hadrian to come to terms with what had happened. Neither had it been for Jasper. He and Alice had skipped their first lessons so that he could try to work out what was going on, Alice imputing as much as she could, whenever she could. Unfortunately, it wasn't much, and Jasper wasn't any closer on deciding what he was going to do. This made both boys anxious about going to lunch. Hadrian entered the cafeteria and saw that the Cullen table was empty so far. He sighed in relief, thinking that he wouldn't be required to socialize with the family at the current time. He got his food, ready to walk outside to sit under a tree when he felt a pair of arms circle around his neck. Turning into the arms, he saw Alice's face. A smile took center stage, reaching from ear to ear. "I'm so happy for you." The squeal came close to Hadrian's ear, creating a ringing sound. "You and Jasper are perfect for each other." Her small arms circled around him tighter, but all he could do was let them as he saw the blonde in question tear the room over the small pixie vampire. The whole school was watching the display. The new boy had managed to do something that no one had been able to do in the past 2 years, 2 things from what they could tell. He had managed to worm his way into the Cullen's little group. Even the blonde-haired Rosalie Hale, known to be beautiful, vain, and rude, had a smile on her face whenever she looked at the black-haired Londoner. But what was the most shocking was what Alice had squealed. Were Hadrian Potter Swan and Jasper Hale together? In his whole time at Forks High School, Jasper had never once looked at any of the guys or the girls, in any way, shape, or form. So what was so good about this new kid? Alice unwrapped her arms from Hadrian's neck, grabbing his arm instead, dragging her new friend to their table. Knowing that her brothers and sister were following behind her, they all sat down, Alice and Edward, Rosalie and Emmett, and Jasper and Hadrian. The first two couples had their eyes glued to the last pair, waiting to see what was going to happen. Before long, they realized nothing was going to happen, so they started talking instead. Ryan. Last night, was everything okay? You left pretty quickly, Emmett cautiously said, unsure on what sort of reaction he would receive. This had received the attention of the rest of the table. Oh, it was nothing, just my adopted brothers. They warned me about our newest additions to Forks. Hadrian started, smiling as he thought of his brothers, glad that he had seen them again. They had pretty much been missing from his life since the end of the final battle. He had only seen them once since Draco's funeral. Speak of the devils, and they shall appear. Ron and Ginny entered the cafeteria as Hadrian talked. Ginny had the same boy as earlier, next to her. His arm wrapped around her shoulders, hers around his waist. But what was more shocking was Lauren. She and Ron mirrored the way Ginny and the other boy were standing, down to the last dot. Though Lauren's arm held onto Ron tighter than Ginny's did around the boy. Ron looked around, spotting Hadrian sitting with the Cullens. He started walking over, stopping when he was close enough to talk. So Potter, how have you been? Gotten married to any more snakes? I hear Snivellus is single. I'm sure he wouldn't mind marrying you. He sneered, before he and his sister started laughing. But that is beside the point. I assume you know Lauren here, and this is Jacob Black, Ginny's new boyfriend. This one is a good choice. He won't turn into a fag, unlike some people. Hadrian breathed calmly before standing up. I'm good, living like a bachelor. Nope, not married, haven't found the right bloke yet, he said, almost as if he was joking with a good friend, which at one point, Ron had been. Unfortunately Severus is going to have to find someone else, not a fan of black hair. Of course I know Lauren, who doesn't? She gets around enough, or tries to anyway. But, Jacob Black, it's nice to meet you. I hope that you listen to me, and watch her. One of the many reasons I dumped her, didn't like finding her with one of my dorm mates at school. Jacob looked at the girl that was attached to his side. Truth be told, he didn't like Ginny that much, or her brother at all. He had met the two at First Beach, in La Push 2 days earlier. He had just finished fixing up his rabbit, and had taken it out for a spin, deciding to go for a walk along the beach. This was where he had first seen the two Weasleys. Ginny had automatically fallen for him, and asked him out, which he couldn't easily reject. With her brother standing right next to them. So he had agreed, deciding that she might be all right after all. He had mistakenly offered her a ride to school for the next day, but was turned down. They wouldn't be starting until the day after. She had then asked if that offer stood for the day after, and he had then been roped into taking not only her, but her older brother to school for a morning. He had already seen what Hadrian was talking about. After meeting the two redheads at the beach, he bumped into his two best friends, Quill and Embry. Ginny had then openly flirted with both. He was shocked, and quickly said his goodbyes, saying his father needed him. This morning he had arrived at the Weasley household, ready to pick up his two passengers, when their mother, a short plump woman, had wrapped her arms around him, saying how happy she was that Ginny had found someone like Jacob. He had tried explaining that he didn't actually know her daughter, but she would have none of it. Ron and Ginny had come out at that point, and they soon drove off. When they had arrived at the school, both of his passengers saw a boy that they obviously knew. They stepped out of the car. And Ginny wrapped herself around him, and knowing that she was trying to prove a point to the boy that was now near glaring at them, he bent down and kissed her on the cheek. He had been planning to talk to Ginny about how he didn't want to go out with her, but now knew that he had no hope of doing that now. When they approached the boy and his friends, he saw the Cullens were also standing behind him, looking ready to help out if anything happened. Jacob was shocked at what Ron had said, and was considerably less than surprised by what he had said about Ginny. Watching as this boy turned around and walked away, one of the Cullens following behind him. Ginny had automatically turned to the other two male Cullens, and started to flirt with them, pulling her shirt down slightly, showing off more of her womanly assets. Both of the males were disgusted, and put their arms around the two females, and walked off, ready to find their brother. Ron had turned to one of the girls that had stood off to the side, Lauren, and started to flirt with her, terribly, but she was happy. He quickly asked her out, and she accepted, throwing herself at him. The two of them started to walk off, in the direction of the front office, Ginny following close behind, not bothering to say goodbye to her boyfriend. Now, standing here in the cafeteria of Forks High School, Jacob had had enough of the two. Letting go of Ginny, not at all reluctant to, he stepped forward, holding out his hand. "Hi, I'm Jacob." Hadrian looked at this boy, smiling slightly at the looks on his ex-friends' faces. "Ryan. It's nice to meet you. These are Jasper, Edward, Alice, Emmett and Rosalie. Did you want to sit down?" Jacob looked at his watch, seeing how long he had before he had to go back to his own school on the res. He didn't have enough time. "Sorry. I got to get back to my school, maybe another time." Hadrian and the Cullens nodded and watched as Jacob left, turning back to F. Ace the now red hair and faced Weasleys. "So Ron, where is Hermione?" Ryan asked, noticing the absence of the bushy-haired Muggleborn. The know-it-all chipmunk. "Who cares? Probably reading a book somewhere. Dreaming about how she wants her life to be." Ron said, "I dumped her ages ago. I had my reputation to protect after all." Hadrian was shocked. Ron and Hermione were over. Ron had obviously had enough of Hadrian, because he dragged his sister and girlfriend away from the table. The table had no idea on what to say. What could you say? Emmett, again, was the first to break the silence. "Hey, Ryan. Yesterday, those two guys, Black and Malfoy, apparently, or so the rumors go, you know them, that true?" Hadrian was shocked out of his mind when Emmett called his name, but nodded in answer to his question. "Lucius Malfoy. And Sirius Black. Luke is my father-in-law, and Siri is my godfather, pretty much my father, really. They decided to invest some money in this school. Really, they do. Saint want to have a reason to come out here whenever they want, check up on me. They are cool though. Luke is in the government, sort of. Siri, well Siri isn't exactly employed, doesn't need to be either, he has enough money. But he loves pranking people. He is into tricks, and having fun. He owns part of a joke shop, and helps to run it. That is like so awesome. So what is going on with you and Jasper?" Emmett really had no tact. Rosalie didn't think so, at least, as she whacked him across the back of this head. "Sorry Em has no sense of tact. You don't have to tell us anything." Rosalie smiled, shocking everyone else at the table. Rosalie wasn't known to be human-friendly, and showed this whenever possible. So her smiling at this boy, let alone shorting his name, again, when they only met him the day before, was shocking. And boy did she know it. Hadrian laughed at the looks on the faces of some of the inhabitants of the table, before answering, "It's okay Rose. As I have told Jas, I do like him. And would want to go out with him, but am confused right now. Up until around a month ago, I was married. But I have never felt like this, so fast. I only met Jas yesterday, but already, I feel like I could spend my life with him. It's as if I was missing half of me, when I didn't know him, and every time that I see him I get a little bit of that back. I feel full again." A look of understanding crossed Edward's face. And looking around the cafeteria, he motioned to go outside. When they were sitting down under a tree outside he started to explain his idea. "I think I know what is going on," he stated. "When a vampire finds his or her soulmate, they automatically feel like they have found the second half of their soul. All of us, save Jasper and Ryan, have felt it. Vampires only ever, truly, mate once in their existence. If their soulmate were to die, they would be able to move on, and be with another again, but unless their first mate wasn't their soulmate, they would not feel full. They would feel as though they are missing a part of them. When Carlisle first changed me, he felt this, and put it down as loneliness, the longing of a companion. But even after changing me, this feeling did not fully go away. A part of it did, yes, but the majority was still there. Unfortunately, I was not there when he met Esme, but when I came back I saw that he was truly happy, he was complete. Especially now that I had returned. Eventually, I too felt this. I believe I originally ignored it, believing that it was because I was a monster and I didn't actually have a soul. And that was what felt like it was missing. I wasn't like Carlisle. I didn't deserve happiness. I thought this was proved when Rosalie was changed. Carlisle changed for me, so she could be what Esme is to him. When the feeling didn't go away, I believed I did something wrong, that there was no one. This only magnified when Emmett came into the picture, and Rosalie changed, just like Carlisle did. Years later, when Alice and Jasper arrived, saying that we're going to be joining the family, I only had to look at Alice for that feeling. The feeling I had resigned to always have, disappeared, when I looked at her. I felt like I was complete. Jasper never appeared to suffer what the three of us before him did, and I can only believe that is because of his gift. He can feel what everyone else feels, and this affects him. So if everyone felt happy, and complete with their lives, then why would Jasper not feel that? It is the exact same feeling, being projected by 6 other people, one feeling, magnified by 6 times. But now, after seeing Ryan, Jasper doesn't feel alone, he is also happy, and completed. So, why wouldn't he now project that, again, through his gift? Ryan isn't feeling it, he is just experiencing what Jasper is feeling, what the rest of our family has felt for the past centuries. Edward finished his explanation and looked at the faces of his audience. Rosalie's face was screwed up, remembering back before she found Emmett, back when she did feel empty inside. Emmett smiled, proud to know that he was the one who made Rosalie whole. Jasper was smiling, happy too. Oh no, that feeling in the very back of his mind was gone. He would never feel lonely or empty again. Alice's eyes were glazed over, and she had a far-off look in her face. She was in a vision. Edward tuned into her mind, watching the vision she was in. Love you, Hadrian James Charles Potter Malfoy Black Swan, and I will always love you. Jasper and Hadrian were standing alone in a room in what looked to be a castle. One day, I will add at least one extra name to that list. One day, you will become Hadrian James Charles Potter Whitlock. Hadrian looked up into Jasper's eyes as he said that. Why, sir? Are you asking me to marry you? Not yet, but one day, I will ask you. Now, we should be going to the Great Hall, was it? He asked, reluctantly looking at the door, showing that he didn't really want to go. Good. One day, I'll say yes. Yes, let's be going. The Great Hall, here we come. Hadrian said enthusiastically, raising his finger, and before you ask, yes, we have to go. We can't miss out on the celebration, which is after all, in my honor. He quickly kissed Jasper before heading to the door, but was stopped when 2 hands wrapped themselves around his waist and turned him around. If we have to go, I expect a proper kiss now. Jasper exclaimed, leaning down so his face was but centimeters away from Hadrian's. Hadrian closed the distance, placing his soft, warm lips onto Jasper's hard cold ones. The vision ended there, a fact which Edward was glad about. He didn't want to see his brother make out with his one-day brother-in-law, or so he hoped. The rest of the group was watching Edward and Alice, obviously waiting to find out what was going on. Edward wasn't sure if they were going to tell them what had happened, or really, what was going to happen, when Alice saved him, shopping. She screamed, everyone jumping away slightly, this weekend. Ryan and I. Those 2 short sentences were all that she needed to say for the message to get across. Hadrian nodded his head, just as the bell went, signaling the end of lunch. Sure Alice, I'd love to. Alice jumped up and hugged him, before turning to her siblings. Oh, we are going home now, as well. Ryan is going to come too. He is going to tell us what he is. We are going to go to his house. Everyone just nodded, used to this behavior. The group walked to the parking lot, and Hadrian was surprised when Jasper motioned for him to join him on his bike again. Hadrian nodded and jumped on, before speeding out of the lot. Here is the edited version of this chapter. Enjoy. If you haven't voted for the poll, could you please vote? MC. Chapter 9. Ryan and Jasper drove in front as they left the school, leading the silver Volvo to the Swan residence. Every time they were required to turn a corner, Ryan clenched his legs and tightened his arms round Jasper more. Eventually it was hard enough that a human would have been uncomfortable, but for the vampire in question, it was barely noticeable, though Jasper did notice it. And enjoyed it. Pulling up in front of his house, Hadrian noticed the rabbit that he had seen in the school parking lot earlier that day was parked in the driveway. His father was standing by it talking to Jacob and an older man in a wheelchair. The man had the same color skin as Jacob, and long black hair. His face was kind and gentle, and gave off a look of wisdom. Ryan assumed that this was either Jacob's father, or a close relation, as they did look quite similar. The three men turned to look as the bike stopped and Ryan and Jasper got off, the Volvo pulling up behind them. "Hey Dad," Ryan started, not sure on what Charlie would say about his skipping. "Hope you don't mind, we came home early. Last night, our talk got cut short 'cause I had to come back here. So, Alice suggested just leaving so we could finish talking." Charlie shook his head. "That's okay, Hadrian." He looked over at the man in the wheelchair. "This is Billy Black, and his son Jacob. They live at La Push, down on the res. Billy just came over to talk, and watch some repeats of the game from last night. Who have you got with you, by the way?" Looking over at the Cullens, understanding what the people of Forks meant when they said they were insanely beautiful. This was the first time he had seen the Cullen children. Dr. Cullen he had seen occasionally when he was required at the police station to check a body or something. He had yet to see the doctor's wife, Mrs. Cullen. "Hey Billy, it's nice to meet you. Jacob, I thought you went back to school. Anyway." Ryan turned to his four friends who stood behind him, nodding at each in turn when he introduced them. "This is Alice Cullen, Rosalie Hale, Edward and Emmett Cullen." He wasn't sure how to introduce Jasper. They weren't just friends. That was for sure, but he had only been here for a few days. Luckily Jasper introduced himself. "I'm Jasper Hale, Rosalie's twin. It is nice to meet you both and good to see you again, Jacob. I think we should probably head inside." "Yeah?" he asked Ryan, who nodded and led the way inside. They walked up the stairs and entered Ryan's bedroom. After seeing the Cullen mansion previous day, Ryan was slightly embarrassed with his room. Jasper sensed this, and sent a small wave of calm towards the young man, trying to show that he had nothing to be embarrassed about. Ryan smiled softly in Jasper's direction, receiving one in return, as everyone sat down. Ryan and Jasper on the bed, and the rest forming a sort of circle with them. Ryan didn't even bother waiting for anyone to prod him into talking. He began explaining who and what he was. "To start off, I'm a wizard. Until recently, I attended Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Before I start on the whole long story, I want to clarify a few things." Quote, he turned so he was looking at Edward. Slowly he started to lower his occlumency barriers, something he hadn't done in a long time. Edward was shocked, in seeing Ryan yesterday he had been unable to hear a single thought that had crossed through the boy's mind. Now, all at once, he encountered his thoughts and memories. Hadrian sat in a grand room facing three men and one woman. Edward could recognize two of the men, Sirius and Lucius. They were the two men who had come to the school yesterday. The other man had short tawny hair, and had scars running up and down his arms, as well as his face. He looked out of place in the room. Everything else was tailored and obviously custom-made. His clothes were ragged and dirty. The female sat to the left of Lucius, and she shared a striking resemblance to Sirius, cousins maybe. She had blonde hair, and wore a wedding ring that matched the one Lucius wore on his finger. Only then did he notice Ryan was talking, moving to Forks. "I have to get out of here, everywhere reminds me of Draco." The other four just nodded, obviously understanding what he was saying. The image playing in his head was suddenly stopped, bringing his mind back into the present. "Edward, are you okay?" was the single thought that came from his brothers and sisters. He nodded in return, not really trusting himself to speak, though he wasn't sure why. It could be because of the emotions that he had felt watching that memory, which could only have been that. He had only been able to feel what Ryan was feeling, but that was enough. Mixed in with the need to get out of there was a hint of guilt, for even thinking of leaving. Love, for Draco and the family that sat before him, both nervousness and excitement. At being able to meet with his biological father, the only blood relation he had left. Sadness, for having to leave behind the only family he currently knew, but the main feeling was happiness. This had come at the end, when Ryan had noticed the looks of understanding that were on the faces of his family. When Edward finally spoke, he asked the one question he had, do you still feel guilty for leaving England? It wasn't the question anyone had expected him to ask, and had everyone but Ryan confused. A little bit, yeah. But most of the guilt is gone. When I left England, my family was torn apart. In the last month or so, my husband, Draco, was killed. This tore everyone up. I locked myself away for weeks, waiting for him to walk back through those doors, all the while knowing he wouldn't. Eventually, I had to get out of there, and I found a way. My mother, Lily, had written me a letter before she was killed. When I received it, I learned about Charlie and Forks. This was the way out. When I met Lucius, Narcissa, Sirius and Remus, to tell them I was leaving, I felt guilty that I could just run away. None of them could, at least, not forever. But then I saw that they understood, and that eased the guilt. Getting here made the guilt lessen, till what it is today, almost non-existent. Ryan breathed, seeing the faces of the vampires take in the information he had just shared. Jasper, who knew a bit of this, put his arm around Ryan's shoulders, bringing the smaller human in closer until he was tucked up into Jasper's side. When everyone else came out of their daze, Edward sked the question everyone thought he would have asked first: what was that, and how did you do it? Ryan laughed softly. That was occlumency. I will explain it more later. First, let me tell you my story. July the 31st, 1980. In a little town called Godric's Hollow, Hadrian James Charles Potter Swan was born to Lily and James Potter. Ryan started the story much like he had when he told it to Charlie 2 days previous. Much of the story he kept the same, changing small bits like fifth year, explaining more about occlumency, what it was and what it could do. He talked more in depth about Quidditch, promising to take Emmett to a game one day. To Alice and Rosalie, he showed them various wizarding outfits, like robes and such. He outlined the war, and his part in it to Jasper, who was a true soldier at heart, saying what they should have done in certain situations. This made Ryan wish, more than once, that Jasper had been there as a strategist rather than Ron. He told his story, right up until the end of the war, ending it in the same way he had with Charlie. Hadrian hid himself away from the world, until he received a letter from his mother, informing him of his true parentage. He decided to meet his newfound father, and so traveled to a little town on the Olympic Peninsula, in Washington state, called Forks. Hadrian looked at everyone's faces, eager to see what they thought. Hola peeps. I wish to, as always, thank Makuriyami Ukami for baiting this story for me. After reposting the previous chapter, I realized I had forgotten to re-thank Rose Aislinn for being this story's 100th reviewer. Anyone interested, go and read her story, Orion Black, Time Traveler. It is a great read. I want to thank everyone who voted for Jacob's imprint. For some reason, the poll didn't work properly. Thank you for everyone who reviewed, and I hope everyone keeps reviewing. As to why this chapter is so short, my school started again on Thursday. I am in year 11, second last year, and even on the first day, I had quite a load of homework. School was closed 09 Friday, but even with a 3-day weekend, I only got time to write as much as I did. I don't go to school on Wednesdays, so that will be my writing day, meaning chapters should be up on Thursday, or Friday, or longer, depending on how long it takes to get betayed. Thank you. Matsuda-chan. Chapter 10. This chapter is dedicated to the people who have lost their lives or someone they knew, due to the Victoria bushfires. My heart goes out to you. Know that all of Australia, and hopefully the world, is behind you, raising money. Australians stick together, and that is what we are going to do. I am not a religious believer, but I still pray for everyone, and anyone that has been caught. I ask everyone to keep the people who have already lost everything, and the people who still have so much to lose, in your prayers. They need it. The day started out gloomy, dark, and wet. A typical day in Forks Shore, but it seemed different today. As if something was coming, something bad, sitting just out of sight, on the edge of the horizon. Ryan woke up early, just as he always did. He walked down the stairs, said hello to his father and prepared breakfast just as he always did. After he walked back to his room, he grabbed his clothes and went to the bathroom to get ready. Maybe if Ryan had taken the tea, me to look out his window like he always did, or even look at his calendar, he would have noticed the date. October 31st, Halloween. Ever since being introduced to the wizarding world, something bad had happened to him on this day. The day that he had told the Cullens about him seemed like it had only been yesterday, when in truth it had been weeks, just over a month and a half. Since telling them, Ryan and the Cullens had all gotten closer. They had told him everything they could about being a vampire and the vampire world, and in turn he had told them more about the magical world, showing them his magic when he could. He had formally introduced them to Charlie, Sirius, Lucius, and Narcissa. Remus hadn't been able to come down, helping to rebuild Hogwarts and all. Siri and Luke had helped Dee to show the vampires more complex magics. The week after Ryan and the Cullens had swapped their stories, La Push High was forced to be temporarily closed, and several Quileute students were required to start at Forks High. This group included Jacob, and his friends, Quill, Embry, and Seth. Because of this transfer, Ryan and the Cullens had a chance to get to know Jacob, and had let him, and to a certain extent, his friends joined their group, making it the first time since the Cullens had moved, that people had been willingly welcomed into their close circle. Most of the time, school was good, but every now and again, Ron or Ginny would poke their heads into the picture, ruining everything else. Ron had found that Muggle High School was easier than Hogwarts, yet he was still failing across every subject. Except maybe French and PE. He knew a lot of the French language, as did Ginny, because of Fleur. She and Bill had gotten married just before the war truly broke out, and as they visited their family in Forks a lot, the two high school students had picked up a lot of the language. Ron and Lauren had broken up not long after they had started going out, and since then he had been Ying to convince Rosalie and Alice to go out with him, much to the annoyance of both people, and the anger of their husbands and mates. Ginny had resumed her spot as the school go-around girl, a role she had held at Hogwarts in Ryan's 7th year after he had come out to his friends. In the first 5 weeks of school, she had been with Mike Newton, Eric Yorkie and Tyler Crowley. Not to mention countless Quileutes in between the three boys. As Ryan drove to school, in his own truck for once, he thought about Jasper. Every day all he looked forward to at school was Jasper. His heart broke a little every sunny day, and a little more every time he thought about how they were not yet together, something that would have to be fixed soon. When Ryan had told the group about his being a wizard, and about magic, he had expected them to reject him, and when they hadn't said anything, just sat there, he had walked out of the room. Jasper had followed right after him, sending out waves of calm. "Ryan, stop," Jasper yelled, standing at the front door, watching the boy walk out across the front yard. "Why are you going? I can't be here. I can't listen as you all reject me for what I am." Ryan cried, tears running down his face like Niagara Falls. "Nearly everyone I have ever loved has left me, or rejected me for something I can't control. I cannot sit in that room, watching as you tell me you want nothing to do with me." Using his vampiric speed, Jasper raced forward, holding the smaller boy in his arms. "We are not going to reject you," Jasper started. "We are shocked. They never once let a human into our lives, never. Then we met you, and automatically, we all knew you had to be a part of our family, me especially. But now we find out you are a wizard. Wizards have been hunting vampires for centuries now. We started off as friends, as your scent is different to humans, not as food like we could be. Then they started hunting us, so we hunted them back. Ever since then, we vampires have refused to mingle with any wizards, or the Wiccan witches for that matter." Yesterday, sitting in the cafeteria, Alice had a vision, which showed that you would one day be a part of us, be one of us. Edward was confused. He couldn't read your mind, even though you were definitely there in the room. Rosalie was confused at how we could let human join us, something that has never happened before in history. But then she saw my face and the smile that took over, and she changed. She saw how much happier I could be, and decided then and there that she likes you and that you wouldn't be allowed to ever leave. Emmett was happy for me. He is the one I talked to, telling him about how lonely I felt, about how I had no one to fight for. A soldier isn't themselves when they have no one to fight for. He was happy that I had found someone, and even happier that he wouldn't have to defy Rose because of it. I automatically knew there was something special about you. I just didn't know what, until today at lunch. Quote. Jasper finally stopped, taking a breath he probably didn't need. Come back inside, please. I know the others feel bad, and wish to explain. Holding out his hand, motioning with his head up to where his brothers and sisters were staring out the window watching the two interact. Ryan placed his hand in Jasper's and noticed the cliché, they fit together perfectly. They walked into the house and up to Ryan's room together. Since that day, Ryan's feelings for Jasper had grown, as, he believed, had Jasper's. But both were too afraid to make the next move. Omething that Jasper's family were getting tired of. Together, they had decided if the two didn't get together soon, they would take matters into their own hands, setting the two up. Hey guys, sorry that this has taken so long to get out. And is so short. School has been really hectic, bloody year 11. Apparently the school has decided, teachers are required to give out homework for every class, and the expectation is apparently 4 hours a night. Needless to say, I hate classes right now. Teachers are starting to let up on the amount of work they dish out, so chapters will, hopefully, be written, edited and put up a lot quicker than this one has. Also, I have just discovered the wonders of MSN. Before getting my laptop, my parent wouldn't allow me to get it. Now that has changed, and I am addicted. It doesn't help when people keep me up to 1.30 glares at John, making me fall asleep in history and maths. My MSN is Veggie Vamwanub, so please add me. Just make sure to say that you are from fanfiction, so I don't think you are a random. Also, any Facebook goers out there, PM me, and I'll add you. I need more friends. I'm doing a comp with Dad. Thank you. Matsuda-chan. P.S. If anyone has any ideas on how you want Jasper and Ryan get together, PM, not review, me, I might use your idea. A.N. Hey guys, I am so sorry. I know I promised you guys a new chapter over 2 months ago, there are certain things that have prevented that. I have about half of the next chapter ready, which is where my notes end. If anyone has any ideas that they could help me with, then they would be most welcome. As I am seriously at a loss as to where to take my story for the most part. Again, I am sorry for everything, and the breaking of my promise. There is a longer and more detailed explanation on my profile, if anyone cares about it.